In the 19th century, the Scottish Highlands, a place of stunning natural landscapes, where the only way to travel across the moors was by horse or on foot. At this time, the Industrial Revolution had not yet reached this remote area near Bonar Bridge. There were no railway tracks, no stations, and no steam engines. However, a legendary report from this era describes an event that suggests the coming of the railway was preceded by a ghost-like version of itself. Two local men were walking through the open countryside when the quiet was broken by the arrival of a massive mechanical object. They watched as a phantom train roared across the moor. What made the sighting impossible was that the train was moving over open ground where no rails had been laid. It followed a specific, straight path through the heather before disappearing as abruptly as it came. This event is categorized as a premonition haunting or an acoustic shadow from the future. Rather than a ghost of something that had already happened, this was a glimpse of an event yet to come. Interestingly, the phantom train followed the exact route where a physical railway line would eventually be built years later. It is as if the arrival of the railway was such a significant change to the landscape that it projected its presence backward through time. Today, the story remains a unique part of Highland folklore. It doesn't rely on the usual tales of spirits or tragedy, but rather on the idea that the land itself reacted to the massive industrial shift that was coming. The witnesses weren't looking at a spirit of the dead, but at a piece of the future that had temporarily slipped into their present, leaving them to describe a technology that didn't yet exist in their world. We now shift our focus to the ancient ruins of Whitland Abbey in Wales. The history of the land is usually associated with its medieval past. However, long before the Great Western Railway extended its reach into this part of Dyfed, a witness standing near the Abbey ruins reported a haunting that had nothing to do with the ancient stones. Instead of seeing a ghost, he experienced a powerful, industrial pre-echo of a future that was still several years away. At a time when the valley was silent and no tracks had been planned for the area, the witness was suddenly surrounded by a massive mechanical sound. He described it as the noise of 1,000 wheels, a continuous sound of metal on metal that was so intense he could feel the vibrations in the ground beneath his feet. Along with this thunderous rumble came the sharp sound of a steam whistle. In this rural setting, such a sound was completely unknown and impossible. This haunting is a rare example of a purely acoustic premonition. The witness wasn't seeing a visual apparition, he was listening to the sounds of a railway journey that wouldn't actually take place for years. Paranormal researchers often suggest that certain events carry so much energetic weight that they create ripples in time before they even occur. The noise of the 1,000 wheels suggests that the sheer scale of the coming industrial age was so overwhelming that it bled through the veil of time. Even now, visitors to the Abbey ruins often feel a sense of unease or a tension in the atmosphere. The legend of the phantom train's sounds at Whitland Abbey serves as a reminder that time isn't always a straight line. It leaves us with the unsettling thought that the most significant events in our history might cast shadows into the past, haunting the quiet places of the world with the noise of a future that is already on its way. Premonitions are something that are hard to explain, especially if it is something completely new. There are all sorts of premonitions reported throughout history. What's your thought on them? Or better still, have you ever had one and it came true? If so, please tell us about it in the comments. In the quiet region of Murray, the site of the old railway line at Dunphail has become the setting for one of Scotland's most persistent ghost train legends. Long after the physical tracks were removed and the sound of daily commuters faded into history, witnesses began reporting that a ghost service was still running. Unlike many other hauntings, the reports describe a remarkably clear and consistent apparition. During the 20th century, multiple people reported seeing an empty ghost train travelling along the path where the rails once lay. What makes these sightings stand out is the detail of the lights. Witnesses have described seeing the train moving through the night with its internal carriage lights on, casting a glow over the surrounding countryside as it passes. Despite the lights, and the obvious presence of the carriages, the train is said to be completely empty. No passengers can be seen on board the train. The haunting suggests a residual energy, where a specific event or routine has been recorded by the environment and plays back under certain conditions. There is no specific tragedy linked to this particular train. Instead, it seems to be a phantom of habit. It serves as a reminder that the decades of constant movement and energy on these lines may have left a permanent impression on the land, one that continues to manifest as a glowing, empty traveller long after the age of steam has passed. Not far from Dunphail, another Murray haunting centres on the impressive stone architecture of the Divvy Viaduct. Viaducts are often the focus of railway folklore because of their height and the sheer industrial effort required to build them, and the Divvy Viaduct is no exception. Although the line it once carried is now disused, the structure itself appears to still play host to the heavy traffic of the past. Witnesses have reported the sight of a phantom train crossing the viaduct under the cover of night. These reports are often described as spooky and brief, with the dark silhouette of a steam engine and its carriages silhouetted against the sky as they move across the high arches. There is a specific eeriness to a train crossing a viaduct that no longer connects to any active tracks. It appears from the darkness on one side and vanishes back into the void on the other. Unlike the glowing lights of the Dunphail haunting, the Divvy Viaduct train is often seen as a dark, looming mass. Some locals believe these sightings are more likely to occur during specific weather conditions, perhaps when the damp Scottish air helps to trigger the atmospheric recording. Whether it is a trick of the light or a genuine spectral playback, the image of a phantom train suspended high above the valley floor remains one of the most iconic and haunting images in Scottish railway lore. Near the village of Rhydyfelin in Wales is where the haunting takes a different and more unsettling form. This is not a haunting of sight, but one of pure sound. Along a stretch of the old railway line, witnesses have reported encounters with a train that is entirely invisible, yet so loud and clear that it feels as though it is only inches away. Reports from as recently as 2003 and 2004 detail a slow-moving train that can be heard travelling along the site of the former tracks. Witnesses describe the distinct sound of a heavy engine and the clanking of carriages, often moving at a leisurely pace as if pulling into a station that no longer exists. Despite the clarity of the noise, which is often loud enough to stop people in their tracks, excuse the pun, there is absolutely nothing to be seen. The air remains calm, and the landscape is empty, even as the sound of grinding metal passes right by the witness. This type of auditory haunting is common on disused lines, where the noise of the machinery seems to have outlasted the machines themselves. For those who have experienced the engine, the lack of a visual element makes the encounter terrifying. It forces the witness to rely on their ears to track a heavy, invisible force that seems to be operating on a schedule that the rest of the world has long since forgotten. Possibly the most terrifying of the Highland reports comes from the area around Kyle of Lochalsh. While many ghost trains are seen as fading shadows or glowing lights, the black train of this region is described as something far more malevolent and strange. It is a sighting that moves beyond a simple residual recording and into the realm of a true spectral anomaly. Witnesses have described a dark, creepy locomotive that travels the tracks. What sets this apart from other sightings is the detail of the fire. The train is said to spit actual flames as it moves, lighting everything up with an unnatural, flickering glow. It doesn't follow a known schedule, and it doesn't appear to be heading toward any station. Instead, it roars across the landscape before simply disappearing into the hills. The black train is often regarded with a sense of dread by those familiar with the story. The presence of fire and the aggressive nature of its movement suggest a haunting that is more than just a memory of a journey. Some believe it represents the spirit of the industrial age at its most raw and destructive, a ghost of fire and iron that refuses to be quiet. It remains a stark, frightening image, a flaming engine racing through the cold Scottish night toward a destination that doesn't exist in our world. In the quiet countryside of Ayrshire, along the Pinmore railway line, there is a haunting that serves as a somber reminder of the personal tragedies hidden behind railway history. Long before the Second World War changed the face of the country, a young girl reportedly took her own life by throwing herself under a passing train. While the physical evidence of that day was cleared away decades ago, her spirit is said to have never left the site of her final desperate act. Witnesses travelling or working along this stretch of track have reported seeing a solitary female figure standing by the rails. She is often described as appearing quite young, watching the modern world pass by from the edge of the embankment. Unlike the aggressive black train of the Highlands, the girl of Pinmore is a quiet presence. She does not interact with those who see her. She simply exists as a fading image of a life cut short. A resident of the tracks who appears to be waiting for a train that has already passed. For many who know the story, the haunting is a crisis manifestation that has settled into a permanent residual haunting. It highlights the intense emotional energy often associated with railway lines, places that are traditionally hubs of transition, reunions, and unfortunately, deep despair. The girl remains a permanent fixture of the Ayrshire landscape, a silent witness to the passage of time and the iron road that ended her life. The disused rail tunnel at Auchindyni in Lothian is home to a haunting that is as frantic as it is tragic. The story centres on a woman who, devastated by the end of a relationship, chose to drown herself in the river that flows near the tunnel entrance. While her body was recovered from the water, her spirit seems to have sought refuge within the dark, damp confines of the nearby railway tunnel. Reports from this site describe a woman seen running through the darkness of the tunnel. She is often spotted in a state of great distress, moving quickly as if trying to escape something, or could be racing toward her own end. The most unsettling part of the sighting is the way she disappears. Witnesses say she is visible one moment, her footsteps echoing in the tunnel, and then she suddenly vanishes into thin air before reaching the tunnel's exit. The tunnel haunting is a classic example of a residual loop, where a moment of extreme emotional trauma is imprinted on the surroundings. The tunnel, with its cold air and silence, acts as a perfect gallery for this tragic playback. For those who brave the walk through the disused passage, the sound of running feet and the sight of a fleeting, desperate figure serve as a chilling reminder that some heartbreaks are so profound they can outlast the person who felt them. The Talyllyn Railway in Gwynedd is famous for its scenic beauty, but the Dolgok Viaduct carries a much stranger reputation. In 1982, reports emerged of activity that moves away from traditional human apparitions and into the realm of the unexplained. Witnesses, including climbers in the area, reported seeing strange, black, darting shapes moving along the tracks and the structure of the viaduct itself. These shapes are often described as beings that are lacking any distinct features, moving with an unnatural speed. Alongside these visual anomalies, the area is known for phantom whistles and lights that appear in the middle of the night when no trains are scheduled to run. Unlike the clear-cut stories of Pinmore or Auchindyni, the haunting here feels more chaotic and otherworldly, as if the viaduct has become a crossroads for various types of supernatural energy. The viaduct serves as a focal point for these encounters, possibly due to its height and its position within the deep Welsh valley. Whether these darting shapes are the spirits of those who built the line or something more ancient drawn there, they remain a source of fascination and fear. The combination of modern industrial structures and ancient landscapes often produces these unique kind of hauntings, where the ghosts are as much a part of the structure as the people who once worked there. In the late 19th century, the city of Glasgow was a sprawling hub of industrial power, with its expanding railway network reaching deep beneath the bustling streets. The tunnels below the city carried a dark atmosphere. One of the most terrifying and bizarre reports from this era comes from the subterranean stretch of track between the Shields Road and West Street stations. Unlike a traditional haunting, where a witness might see a solitary figure, this encounter was described as a massive, overwhelming sensory assault. Witnesses claimed to have encountered what they called a clattering cloud, a dense, chaotic mass of energy that surged through the tunnel with a deafening roar. It was described as a swirling mist that carried its own internal light, but the most frightening detail was what lay within the vapor. Those who saw it reported the distorted, agonized faces of the dead peering out from the cloud, their features twisted as if they were part of the storm itself. The haunting was preceded by a violent metallic rattling, a sound so loud it mimicked the noise of a train falling apart at high speed. Yet when the cloud passed, the tracks remained empty, and the tunnel returned to a deathly silence. Paranormal researchers often point to this event as a rare example of a collective residual haunting. It suggests that the tunnels had become a repository for the intense emotional and physical trauma of the rail manifesting as a literal storm of energy. The clattering cloud wasn't just one spirit, but a localized burst of history playing back all at once. For the workers who encountered it, the experience was more than just a sighting. It was a physical confrontation with the sheer weight of the industrial past, trapped in a stone passage where there was nowhere to run. The Glasgow Underground, often called the Clockwork Orange, is one of the oldest subway systems in the world, and its deep circular tunnels are known for their peculiar acoustics. Between the Kelvin Bridge and Hillhead stations, the environment is usually one of rhythmic, mechanical noise, but for those who work there in the quietest hours of the night, the tunnels offer a much stranger sound. For years, maintenance crews and cleaners working after the power has been cut have reported a haunting that is as beautiful as it is unsettling. From the pitch-black depths of the tunnels, long after the last passenger has left, the sound of women singing softly begins. The voices are described as incredibly clear, often harmonizing in a mournful way. There is no record of a specific mass tragedy involving women in this section of the line, which has led many to believe that these are acoustic residues, lingering echoes of daily life from a bygone era, preserved by the unique shape and stone of the tunnels. To encounter these voices in the absolute silence of a locked station is an experience that many staff members find deeply moving, but profoundly creepy. There is something deeply human about the sound of singing in such a cold, industrial environment. Yet the knowledge that the tunnels are empty makes the beauty of the song feel like a warning. It serves as a reminder that the underground is a place where time behaves differently, and that the millions of lives that have passed through these stone arteries may have left behind more than just footprints. They may have left their voices to echo in the dark forever. On the night of December the 28th, 1879, a violent storm tore across the Firth of Tay. As a passenger train made its way across the newly constructed Tay Bridge, the central high girders gave way under the combined force of the gale and the weight of the engine. The train, along with 75 souls, plunged into the freezing waters below. It was a tragedy that shook the nation, and according to local legend, the anniversary of that night has become a fixed point in the paranormal calendar of Scotland. Every year on December 28th, witnesses have reported the sight of a glowing passenger train appearing on the bridge. Unlike other ghost trains that might appear as dark silhouettes, this apparition is described as radiating a strange, ethereal light. It is seen moving along the tracks, with its red tail lights clearly visible, heading toward the spot where the bridge once failed. The haunting follows the exact path of the ill-fated journey, replaying the final moments of the 1879 crossing in a silent, luminous loop. The Tay Bridge haunting is a classic example of a fixed anniversary manifestation. It suggests that the sheer scale of the disaster and the terror of those on board created an energetic imprint so deep that it refuses to fade. For those who watch from the shoreline on a cold December night, the sight of the glowing carriages is a chilling bridge between the past and the present. It serves as a permanent memorial in light and shadow, reminding the world that while the iron and stone were replaced, the memory of that night remains etched into the very atmosphere of the Firth.